TaxAct knows filing your small business taxes can be a nightmare, like the kind where you're being chased by a giant W-2 form, and you're running and running, but you can never reach the submit button. Or something like that. So, TaxAct offers Expert Assist with live tax experts to make filing taxes less scary. Now, you can just have pleasant dreams about being chased by other giant, non-threatening paperwork. TaxAct. Let's get them over with.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
I was running until I wasn't. My hospital stay would have cost nearly $48,000, even with insurance. But with VA, I'll pay $0. And VA is the best, most affordable healthcare in America for veterans like me. Knowing that my family is waiting at home and a surprise medical bill isn't, that's good for my heart. My service was then, my benefits are now. Get what you earned. Visit choose.va.gov.
Not all veterans are eligible for the type or amount of benefits mentioned here.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risk. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
At the Musial with Alan and Daniel, we'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. Everyone come gather round, listen to your favorite sound. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We'll talk the games and all the rest, about the team that we love best. We'll talk about the Cardinals all night long. We're gonna talk about the Cardinals all night long.
Good evening. Welcome into another edition of Meet Me at Musial. I'm your host, Daniel Shop C70. Joining me this week, Ben Clemens from Fangraphs. Ben, thanks for joining me. And how are you doing?
I'm doing really well. It's just another great week of baseball. You know, not always great Cardinals baseball, but that'll happen throughout the season. And I don't know, it's just great to be back in baseball season.
Yeah. And before we get to the Cardinals, you do obviously have a broader perspective writing at Fangraphs than just the Cardinals. So we did want to ask you, over the first, well, now basically 2 weeks, what stood out to you in baseball in general?
I'd say the main thing that really stood out to me is a lot of these NL West teams look pretty good. You know, it's a very competitive division. And I wouldn't have necessarily expected the Giants to look this good or the Padres, but we knew the Dodgers and D-backs were going to be pretty good. Those both, you know, were good last year and added. And I think that's just going to be a very fun division to watch. I think the Central is going to be fun too. Like, none of these teams are bad. None of these teams are great. And the Cardinals are not as bad as we were maybe worried, I'd say. They don't look it to me early, at least. And also, the Cubs and Brewers don't look that great, so it might be kind of a five-way rumble the whole way, that'd be really exciting. I'm really hoping for it.
A little bit less Indy 500 and more Demolition Derby, maybe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that will be kind of interesting to see how that all shakes out. I mean, again, we're at the end of this weekend, you're talking at 10% of the season gone. There's still so much left, but it has been a roller coaster of a start, I guess, maybe for the Cardinals, from the first weekend, sweeping the Twins, to really having trouble putting some wins together. Just kind of looking at the team, I think you probably see the same thing that most of us see, but is there anything that just stands out of why they can't get a whole lot of traction?
I mean, I think it's because they assembled about like 2/3 of a team, and they kind of knew they were doing that.
Yeah.
But they've got a lot of like very nice and very interesting players, but not as many as you need to fill out a 26-man roster. And I think they basically warned us about this before the year. They didn't sign anybody, but I've been very excited watching. Like, I think Newt Barr looks like he might have taken another step forward, which is always exciting. Victor Scott looks a lot better than he did last year. Not that I think he's going to keep hitting this well, but he didn't look like he belonged in the big leagues last year, and this year he looks much better. So I've actually had a lot of fun watching kind of like the young guys. I don't think that we're either as good or as bad as it's looked at times. Like, Wilson Contreras won't stop hitting this poorly. Victor Scott won't keep hitting this well. Like, Pedro Pajes is going to probably cool off quite a bit. But I think the Cardinals are... The big fear I had coming into the year was that, like, if a few young guys didn't work out, then the offense could be really bad. Like, really bad. And that just hasn't been the case at all. It's actually been quite good. So even though, it is really boom bust, and you play 13 innings against the Pirates with zombie runners for several of them and score 1 run. Like, that's bad. But I thought it could have been worse. The pitching's bad, and that's nothing new. Like, the pitching's going to be bad. I think that's kind of par for the course in the recent Cardinals front office. Is like the reason that they're turning everything over and trying to do it differently is because they didn't have enough ability to develop pitching before. So it's like Sonny Gray, and if he's scuffling like he is now,
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I guess it makes the good start stand out a little bit more. I mean, we're seeing a fairly good start so far. We're only through 5 innings right now tonight with Palante, and Eric Fetty did pitch fairly well in in Pittsburgh. I mean, I guess fairly well as in no hits before he got taken out. So I guess that's pretty good. So they've had their moments. It does feel like the bullpen has been, I don't know the whole problem, but a lot of the problem.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals are out there today saying that Steven Matz is still going to join this rotation, and it's going to be a 6-man rotation for an extended period of time. And it's kind of raised the question, even we've seen it asked to Ollie, how is a bullpen that's already struggling, that's already kind of hitting some limits, going to be able to handle one less person out there? And I don't think Ollie Marmol had a real good answer for that.
Yeah, I don't really envy him. Like, what is he supposed to do here? That he doesn't really have a lot of options. I think it makes sense, honestly, to have Matz in the rotation. I'm just incredibly not sold on Liberatore in the rotation. And so I would like to have Matz as an option, because, I don't know, this is probably dumb of me, but as Matz keeps, like, not succeeding as a Cardinal, I just keep, like, finding reasons that it's probably fine, and this could work out better, and he's got good stuff, and, like, I can see it working. And I mean, I've been wrong. Like, I think I said that starting in 2022, and I've been wrong like every year. But maybe this year. I like him as a starter. I see why they want to do it. The bullpen is really bad, but I don't know. Is putting Steven Matz in the bullpen going to fix all the problems? I'm skeptical. They're like more than one guy short in my mind.
Yeah. And I mean, it does help for allowing, if there's a Miles Michaelis start or a Liberatore start or something like that, that you can pull them early and know that you can cover some innings.
Yeah.
It sounds like Roderick Munoz is going to be that guy going forward, and I think that's going to be a very interesting choice. But you're right. I mean, you got to cover this somewhat, and they don't have off days, so I don't know. I think it's kind of interesting that they're going to this, which, a 6-man rotation does limit some of the good, it gives you one less Sonny Gray start or one less, Eric Fetty start in a going through the roster. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to see how this shakes out and how long they keep running with it.
Yeah, I also think it'll be interesting how they actually do it in practice. If you look at some of the teams that have done 6-man rotations, some of them have like a guy who basically pitches like it's a 5-man rotation. Like
Mhm.
if there's an off day in there at all, then he will pitch every 5th team game. So
Right.
like you'll have a kind of designated like maybe first and second combined starters, so that when there is an off day, like the bottom guys in the rotation eat it rather than actually just disproportionately taking away from everybody proportionally. So I'm hoping they kind of do that with like Gray and I guess Fetty. Look, I am a big Eric Fetty fan, and I think it is very funny that he has like a no-hit bid this year and is below replacement level at Fangraphs. Like he just cannot strike anybody out to save his life.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That he's still definitely our second best pitcher. But I'm hoping that they'll kind of do a 6-man rotation, but tilt it that way. I think that would actually be like, I would be okay with that. It limits a little bit the bullpen stuff you can do, but not enough of a limit for me to not like getting more opportunities to see different guys. So long as, like you said, they're not like just really cutting away from a lot of Sonny Gray starts. Like if we're talking he gets 31 instead of 33 on the year, or 32 maybe instead of 33, I don't care. If you're saying he gets 28, then like we need to talk.
Yeah. And your example reminds me a lot of what they did with Adam Wainwright, the last year or two that Wainwright pitched. Even though they ran a 5-man, it didn't matter if there was a day off. Wainwright pitched on the 5th day. And everybody else just kind of pushed back because Wainwright wanted to stay on his rotation or his schedule, and he'd earned that right by that point in time. So I would hope that you would see something like that with Sonny Gray. But I mean, again, until we see it in practice, it's hard to know.
Agreed.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about roster construction earlier. The fact that Pedro Pajes is now playing second base might indicate that there's some issues with how this is constructed. Coming out of the spring, I mean, we've talked about it on the show a few times, but with Victor Scott making the team, it was very interesting how they decided to go about putting this team together in the 26-man, wasn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I think it shows a lot that they are thinking about next year. Like they've managed to squeeze a lot of interesting players out of the team. I like that they're getting Sajazi some time. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce his name, but something along those lines. I like that they are hopefully playing Jordan Walker more. I mean, like time will tell, because they seem to keep like dangling playing time in front of him and then pulling it away. But so far, he's played almost as much as Victor Scott. He's played 11 games. He's batted 45 times. He's batting second. Like I like that they're giving him time. I like that the position player core is a lot of young guys. As I look at roster resource on Fangraphs, like got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 members of the starting lineup are under 28. I guess Donovan is just over 28. But that's pretty good. You got young people on the bench too. I care a little bit less in pitching, and it's a good thing because pitchers have a lot of older guys. But I think that they looked at the roster as saying like the pitchers in this organization are mostly not going to be on the next good Cardinals team. Probably maybe Jojo Romero and maybe some of the relievers, and I could see Palante being around as just like a kind of nice 4th, 5th starter guy. But like the difference makers are not really in the organization, I don't think. Some of them are in the minors, but none of them are like really good threats to be on the 26-man this year. So they basically said, let's figure out the next hitters and like don't look too much at the pitchers this year. We're not spending money. We're like trying to set up for the future. And so I think I agree with that. I would like just always try to compete, but short of always try to compete, I think if you agree with their goals, then they're doing it in a way that I support.
Yeah, it's not the extreme teardown that we've seen in other places. Yeah. And I think that's what Mo gets at when he says St. Louis wouldn't handle a rebuild. And I think that's probably accurate, right? I mean, I think we see how much angst that a middling team will do. I think even if you tore it down to the studs and played just all your prospects that probably shouldn't be the majors yet, there's going to be a lot of people complaining about how that's going as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think I think the Cardinals do a good job of this, and I think they're doing a good job of this again. Like, they've made a lot of errors this year and like kind of played sloppy, but I've enjoyed watching their games. They have a lot of players that I'm interested in seeing. It is not like, look at some of the bad teams in baseball this year. Some of the bad teams in baseball are really bad. The Rockies are just like abysmal, and there are almost no Rockies that I'm interested in watching. I kind of, without much favoritism, aside from I watch a lot of local games because that's easier. It's on TV instead of MLB.TV. I kind of just pick games at random. I try not to show any favoritism and watch as many games as possible for my job. And it's like basically any games except Rockies games or White Sox games, because those teams are just like unwatchable. Like, there are ways to do rebuilds where it just is no fun for a fan. And credit to the Cardinals for not doing that. When I put on my fan hat, it is still really, I'm very happy that there's a lot of players I like watching. Mason Wynn's fun, Victor Scott's fun, and like could be good. Could be part of the next good Cardinals team. So I really appreciate that. They made an effort. They weren't aiming 5 years out. They're aiming a few years out. Like you said, it's not all the way to the studs. They're keeping enough players on the team that could be around next time. I like that.
Yeah, and they're fortunate, and I say fortunate, they've kind of built their own luck to some degree too. But, if you were going to tear it down to the studs, I guess if you wanted to, this offense would look pretty similar to what it looks like now, right? I mean, you would have made a different effort to get rid of Nolan Arenado, but these are the kind of guys that you're supposed to keep, right? When you're trying to develop, it's a lot of young hitters. Now, yeah, you would have probably done different things with the pitching staff, but on the offensive side of things, this is about, hey, you've got these guys that have already had experience, and you get a chance to see them, just go out there and play and not worry about the consequences. But that's probably not going to be a 100-loss team either.
Yeah. Like, let me put it this way. I think if the Cardinals were serious about really blowing it all up, like serious, like, I don't really care what it looks like on the field. We just need to get the most future value possible, like doing an Orioles style rebuild. I don't think Nootbaar or Donovan would be on the team. Maybe not Burleson either. Like, they would have found ways to trade these guys. And I'm glad they didn't, because I don't think that would make sense. So I'm with you that like they've, like, the way that they're doing it is kind of natural in that, like, they're bringing up a lot of the players who deserve to be in the majors and like just look good enough to play in the majors. But I appreciate that they're not like going out of their way to get rid of anyone who like looks like a competent major leaguer. I think that's probably good for the team. Definitely very good for me as a fan. And I don't think we're going to miss whatever return the Cardinals were going to get for Nolan Arenado. If it was like if it was close to what was rumored from the Astros, it was basically going to be like get out of salary. And personally, I don't care. It's not my money. I like watching Arenado play.
Yeah, I was very glad to see that he rejected that, because I mean, it's much more fun to see him play in St. Louis than somewhere else. Definitely would not have been fun when Houston comes to town, next week or something, to see him on the other side of things. So, I think that now, I guess the question then becomes, these guys they're young. They're a little bit older than, and like you said, most of them are under 28, but they're also a lot of them in that 25, 26 range for the fact for what where their expense is. How do they develop a pitching staff, given what they have currently, both in the minors and in the majors, that is quality enough to support an offense before that offense then becomes free agents?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, one of the just enduringly tough things about developing teams is that it's really hard to figure out pitching. I think that you can use some of the teams who have like done successful rebuilds as good examples. Like, a lot of these teams that have rebuilt kind of on the fly, or not on the fly, but like have rebuilt using like offense, just like never really did figure out pitching, and they either got it in free agency and trade or just didn't. So like going back even to the the curse breaking Cubs, they're kind of the prototype for build through hitting and go and branch out from there, but build through hitting. You focus your draft picks on hitting, focus on having like a productive and dynamic lineup, because those guys project more stably. And The Astros did a very similar thing, and they went out and traded for Justin Verlander, and they happened to hit it really big on signing some older international free agents, but that was just kind of a shot in the dark. And their real plan was like, we'll figure it out later. We'll trade for some guys. The Orioles traded for Corbin Burns. They need to trade for more players. They're kind of failing at the go out and acquire pitching, but I'm kind of guessing the Cardinals will be in the same boat. There was a really good article on Down on the Farm, which is a great kind of minor league focused blog this week that was kind of looking at prospect grades from various public sources and seeing how they've actually translated to real life. I did kind of a similar thing this offseason, and all of those basically agree on this. Pitching prospecting is essentially pointless. They found that there was no difference between like a pitcher that was the number 2 prospect and the number 98 prospect in terms of future outcomes. In terms of just like, here's who public outlets put in those spots, and here's how they actually performed. Is basically just like, no one has any skill at picking these guys. I found essentially the same, that like, if you look at a pitcher with a 50 future value grade, which is like future everyday regular, essentially, it was like 1/3 correct, like 1/3 bullpen, 1/3 bust. And it's like, but that's true for a pitcher with a 55 grade, so like better. And it's not that different for pitchers with 45 grades. It's just like, these guys don't develop in a way that is easy for us to see until it happens. It's much more like they talk to the right guy and things work. So basically what I'd say is, I don't know how the Cardinals are going to develop good pitching. But if they are honest, they're not sure either. And if most teams are honest, they're not really sure. They have a lot of things they're trying. They're trying, like, let's teach some new pitches. Let's use pitching labs. But you just don't know what's going to click with different guys. So what I hope the Cardinals do is spend a lot more money on development. Have some focused minor league coordinators who can work with these guys. Don't have one guy fly in. And honestly, like, they're going to be doing this. I am not worried that they're a team that is like skimping on development resources, particularly given that they're kind of pivoting to Chaim Bloom, who is known as not caring enough about the major league team and caring too much about the minors. Like, my guess is that this is the kind of thing that they're going to do on the pitching front. And I think that this is really what they've kind of been missing. And I'm hoping it's revitalized, is let's figure out a way to give our pitchers a ton of different things they can look at and hope to develop some velocity or some new pitches. You know, this goes back to, was it 2 years ago at this point, when Musial said, like, we have decided we need to get some swing and miss. And it's like, yeah, it's like, that's right. And they do. And I think that a good way to do that is by working with your existing guys and like tinkering. And so I think that's what they're going to do. I have I have no faith in anyone to have a good pitching outcome like situation, because no one does. But I have faith in them to have good process, which is all I can ask for.
It goes back to the old cliche, right? There's no such thing as a pitching prospect.
Exactly. It turns out that was true. Like,
that, and I think that's hard for fans to hear, for sure. But I think we see that so often. I mean, look at the fact, look at Tink Hens, right? We've talked about Tink Hens for a number of years now, and yet here we are again, drafted in 2020. Here we are at the beginning of 2025. He starts the year on the 60-day injured list in the minors. So, I mean, the chances of him making a major league debut this year are not impossible, but they're really slim now, right?
I agree. And even after you hit the majors, like the guy that I was really in on, Yuri Perez on the Marlins, he was our number 3 prospect maybe. And like, you just look at this guy and you're like, yes, this is going to be a great pitcher. Like, he throws 100 with like tons of plus secondaries, and he destroyed the minor leagues and came up and hurt himself and hasn't pitched since 2023 when he threw 90 innings. And like, maybe he'll be back sometime this year. And that was like the most can't miss pitching prospect. Maybe Paul Skeens was, but some of them do hit. But the point is that like lots of these can't miss guys miss. So how do you feel about our like projects? It's no shock if Tink Hens doesn't hit, even if he did everything right and the team did everything right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I think, going back a little ways, I think about when, Alex Reyes was coming up versus Luke Weaver, right? Like Alex Reyes was the guy that you had to have, and injuries and whatever. I mean, he hasn't pitched since that that home run that he gave up against the Dodgers in 19.
Yeah.
Versus Luke Weaver, who it granted has transitioned and is in a different role, but he's had a almost 10-year major league career now. And Weaver was a prospect for sure, but he wasn't expected to be this kind of guy.
I totally agree. Yeah. I mean, I basically started writing about baseball around the time that Luke Weaver debuted, and the whole time I was like, I don't really buy it. Like what's going on here? But hey, this guy has made $15 million playing baseball. Like, he's a real career major leaguer with actual like long major league success over a number of places to where it's not just fake, not a 1 year. He's not a top rotation starter, but he looked awesome as a reliever, and he was certainly capable of basically like eating innings. I think that is a great example of how it's very hard to pick who's going to succeed, because it'd be crazy not to pick Alex Reyes. Like Alex Reyes' stuff, the stuff that Alex Reyes showed in the minors in like 2015 would be good enough to pitch in the majors today. And that's not always enough.
No. And I don't know. It feels like the Cardinals, maybe they shied away from other things a little bit after Reyes, because they never did. I mean, granted, it was part of that is where they drafted, late in the first rounds and stuff like that nature, but they never really seemed to develop another hard throwing guy until maybe this most recent, batch. And if they did, they wound up turning him into a reliever.
Yes,
and so that became a problem as well, which I guess kind of all gets back into this development problem that we've been talking about, that it's just the symptoms of that. And that's why they had to do some significant rearranging and rethinking over the last year or two.
Yeah. I agree completely.
So Wilson Contreras, you said he's going to hit. When? I guess is what everybody wants to know, right? It's surprising to see how much, and I know Wilson talked about it somewhat, that his spring was so good, but they're not, people aren't really challenging. They're just kind of throwing pitches. To see him, as the calendar flips and as the lights come on, to struggle so hard. I mean, it's really the first time we've seen him scuffle this badly since he's come to St. Louis.
Yeah. I mean, to me, what's happening is that he's just pressing. Like, if you look at everything kind of broken down, most of what he's doing is similar to what he's done in past years, except that he's swinging at 40% of pitches outside the strike zone instead of 30. And that's just like an enormous problem. And to me, that just suggests, because if, his swing doesn't look that different, his actual batted ball numbers don't look like terribly different. He's still hit a ball over 110 miles an hour this year already. He has like a similar like elevate kind of launch angle. He's like a lot of the components are there, but it's really hard to be good when you're swinging at 40% of pitches outside of the strike zone. It's just like there are basically no good hitters who do that. And he doesn't do that. Like, that's not who he is. He's a high strikeout guy. He always has been, but he's got like, I'd say average, like an average eye at the plate, and like some swing and miss issues is the reason that he strikes out a lot. He's not like a terrible plate discipline guy. So I don't know why this happens, but it does happen sometimes that like you just start pressing. And I mean, one thing that is very frustrating as a researcher is like, there's no good way to figure out when you're going to stop pressing, but like at some point you just will. Like, every player goes through these stretches. I think that is a good sign that you could look at to see if he's breaking out of it. It's basically like, keep an eye on his chase rate, because the rest of everything looks okay. But I mean, if you watch him, he looks a little lost, and he chases a bad pitch or two, and then he's behind in the count, and he's just like not a great guy at protecting from strikeouts when he's down 1-2. To me, that's kind of like, that's the issue here, is that once he gets behind, like, he's too loose with his swings right now, which is bad for his style of game, and it's just kind of snowballed on him. But I don't see anything that makes me think like he's just completely broken. So I think that's a good sign, and that he'll turn it around.
Yeah, I would hope so. half seriously wonder if the position change is a little bit of that. Because, I mean, at first base, you can sit there and think about your bat at bats a little bit more than you could when you're behind the plate, focused on
Oh yeah,
calling
totally.
game.
I mean, a
So,
good example of that too is like, Rafael Devers started the season just like abysmal, right? Like I
mhm,
think he struck out 9 times, 9 times in his first 10 plate appearances, and the other one was a walk. Like he went 0 for 9 with a walk, and all 9 were strikeouts. And it
mhm,
was like, oh, he's adjusting to DH, and that definitely might have been the case. And then he just like turned it on and
yeah,
looks completely the same since. You don't know how long it's going to take guys to adjust, and yeah, like they don't know either, right? Until they're it's like he said about spring training with pitchers not trying their hardest. I bet you it's a
mhm,
lot easier to not, kind of obsess on your bat at bats in spring training. Cause like,
yeah,
I don't know, you're obsessing about like when you're going to get out of town or like when you're going to get out of the stadium and go home and like what your family's doing and not the games don't matter.
yeah,
So
yeah.
I think that's a credible reason that he might be scuffling to start the season. But I mean, I hope that's it because that's not something that'll last. Like that'll just get fixed.
Also, Rafael Devers got to face the Cardinal pitching staff, so that helped as well.
That's
That'll get anybody on a groove. It seems like, um, and that's what's that was that series. When I think back of that series, that's to see a game that they had in hand get lost with Ryan Helsley is
Yeah.
hard, right? Because this is a team that has to win all those kind of games just to have a shot at things.
Yeah, I pretty much agree. That was a rough one.
But and we haven't seen a lot of Helsley, but it doesn't look like. I mean, that looked like a one-time thing, right? I mean, bad weather, everything like that, just couldn't
Yes,
figure out the zone. But everything else
completely
we've
agree.
seen out of Helsley looks pretty good.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. I think he looks just the same, which is to say, good. Like I'd be very happy with having him as a closer for like lots of teams in baseball. He's another example of like I'm glad. I actually think he might get traded this year if the Cardinals are not in it. That one kind of makes sense to me because
Yeah.
he's headed towards free agency. He's 30. I think of him as young, but he's just not anymore. He's been in the system for a while, and teams would like obviously like to have Brian Helsley. He's really good, and he's also like it's clear that he's not a reliever flash in the pan at this point, which I think counts for a lot. So yeah, I am every bit as confident in him as I ever have been. Still looks the part. And yeah, relievers are going to have bad games. I went to a bunch of Camilo Doval games with the Giants last year. And like, that's what you're worried about is that guy was like, he was kind of flash in the panty. He wasn't like Helsley. It's like he just had one meteor year. And then when he started getting bad, it was with walks. And that's the kind of reliever meltdown that when it happens, you're like, oh God, we got to pay attention to this. But no, I think Helsley is just as good as ever.
Were you surprised that he was not traded already? I mean, there was that battle right over this winter that you trade him if you're looking at this development thing versus trying to have the best team possible to put things on the floor and wait for the trade deadline.
Yeah, I think with relievers in particular, you're not really giving up that much because if you're a bad team, having a reliever, or like if you're not in playoff position, having a reliever is useless. So a lot of teams will kind of wait till they're in the season, and then if they're competitive, they're willing to give a lot more for a reliever. If you're the Tigers on January 5th, like how much do you really want to trade for Ryan Helsley, knowing that if you start like 20 and 30, you're going to feel really bad? You can wait till July, and then if you're above 500, like, oh, now it's great. Like you didn't actually care about the lost value from not having him for the first half of the season because it's not very high. Like I think War does a good job of explaining that. That like relievers don't really add a ton of wins to your team over the course of a year. They just don't pitch that much. But they matter a ton in the playoffs, and they matter a ton like on the margin, separating good teams from other good teams. So if I'm the Cardinals and I didn't get blown away with an offer in the winter, yeah, you just wait because you know that people will want them more when they know that they're in the playoff chase.
Right. Yeah, so. And the difference between selling a year's worth of Helsley versus selling 2 months worth of Helsley may not be that different. In fact, it may be, it may not be anything at all.
Negligible to me aside from injury risk. Like if he gets hurt, yeah. But other than that, like I just don't think it's that much. Like if you look at his like kind of career line, like he's been worth like 2 wins a year. as a closer, which is like really good. That's very impressive. Very few closers are more than that valuable to their team. But I don't know, like that's not that many.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we remember the games that get away, so that's why you want the closer. But
exactly, like every closer lets some games get away, and those feel bad. And he lets fewer get away than almost every other closer. But it's just not like every closer lets some get away. Right. And even going to Helsley doesn't make you perfect. But even the bad ones aren't that bad. Like terrible closers probably have like 80% conversion rates.
Right.
So.
Right. And so yeah, you're like you said, you're adding 1 or 2 or 3 wins. But if those 1 or 2 or 3 wins come in October, then they're kind of
important. It's totally different in October too, because like they pitch a higher percentage of the innings because all the off days. So I think that's really like that's the goal here is like you find a team that is like Ryan Helsley could be the difference for us in the playoffs, and then you go trade him for a good haul. And I think there's a decent chance of that happening. And like if someone had offered them that in the winter, I would have expected them to take it, but it doesn't seem like they did. And yeah.
I mean, we saw Devin Williams get moved in the winter, but that was really the only major piece like that got shifted.
Yes. Yeah. I agree. And I think that was a case where like they just hit the Brewers' ask, which was like, we need a starter. We need like a guy who could make 30 starts for us and like real 30 starts. And I think Cortez, like that was basically what they needed. They smartly, because I mean, have you seen this Brewers pitching staff? It's really bad. They were like, we don't have enough starters. Like it is important for us to move this guy to get a full season's worth of return. So let's do it. And the Yankees also know they're going to be in playoff race, so they can more confidently trade for closers. It's a small market of teams or small group of teams that are like, sure, they'll be in the playoff race, but I think they're one of them.
Yeah. I mean, they usually are. It would be very surprising if they weren't. And I guess if for some weird reason they weren't, then you can flip at the deadline as well. So But so talking about bad starters, the team still has Miles Michaelis taking a turn every 5th or 6th day, depending on how these things go. Is there anything that looks positive about Miles Michaelis, do you think?
I mean, like I'm not super into it, but I think that he'll probably end up just being like a not great kind of 4th, 5th starter type guy. And I mean, that's not very exciting for the Cardinals, but it's not super unreasonable for a guy who's 36, who was never like a Cy Young winner. I think that he kind of is what he is at this point. He's, Eric Fetty basically, but a little bit further down the road, age-wise. And I don't think that's particularly a great fit for a team like the Cardinals, but it's also not a great fit for many teams. So I don't think they're going to trade him for a haul or anything. I think he's just kind of there till he's done. I think this is the last year of his contract. So
yeah.
I don't see any pressing, obvious person they should cut him from the rotation for, but I'm not watching his starts yes, he's going to bring back 2018. It is what it is at this point.
Yeah. I did it's a very basic, look, but I last week on other podcast show, searched his game log from last year because, his ERA was terrible and everything was rough last year. But he still had a third of his starts where he gave up 2 or less runs and pitched, usually 6 or 7 innings. He's got those games in him. They just don't happen quite as often as they used to. And the games that are 5 or 6 runs happen just a little bit more than they used to.
Yeah, I agree. That's how I feel about it. Emblematic of Cardinals pitching.
Yeah, pretty much. So do you think we'll see any kind of, I mean, you've got Michael McGreevy, who had a very good spring. You've got Quinn Matthews, who I noticed tonight apparently had a little bit of velocity issues, which is going to be something to watch, but, is still probably knocking on the door. Do they get these guys up some point in time this year, or is it a lot more of just riding these, veterans out unless they're hurt?
I mean, obviously guys could force their hand.
Right.
But I am not really expecting it to happen. I think that if the Cardinals are in the playoff hunt in like July and the veterans are like just truly underperforming, then they're going to have to. Then they're going to have to bring, and the kids are doing well, then I think they'll bring them up. But I don't think they're looking to push their workload. I think that they're probably going to be kind of evaluating how like aggressively to run the pitching staff this year, kind of as the year goes on and based on how teams are doing. Like if the Cardinals are 20-12 in a month, that wouldn't be enough games. 20-12 in 20 days or whatever. They will be a lot more interested in finding ways to get kind of the McGreevy's of the world like aggressively involved in the major league scheme than if they're, I don't know, 13-19 or something. Yep. So I think that a lot of it's really going to come down to like what their record is on Memorial Day, say. That'll really determine the way that things shape out for the rest of the year. And I kind of expect them to be allowing the older pitchers to soak up some innings and try to keep the young guys' arms fresh while still developing them. But I think that is definitely no given.
Does the front office dynamic interest you at all this year? Because of John Mozeliak's last year versus Chaim Bloom, who's, in the building, as it were, even if he's not necessarily in charge of the major league team, there's going to be some discussions. And I think a lot of Cardinal fans continue to try to read the tea leaves and try to say if they do something slightly different, is that because, Bloom is already exerting influence, things of that nature. Does that any of that interest you, or you just kind of just wait to see how it all shakes out?
I am just going to wait to see how it shakes out. I'll probably ask Bernie Miklasz at some point if he knows anything, because I like talking to him. But I just don't have the inside scoop, and I feel like I'll learn it, at some point. And I don't know, like I like watching the people on the field. I hope that this is not too offensive, but I don't really enjoy like playing like fantasy GM and like trying to decide which GMs are good or bad. Like those jobs are cool and I wish I had them, but I'm gonna focus on like players. There's just so much baseball to watch without having to get too focused on like what's going on in the politics of front offices.
Yeah, that's fair. I think a lot of people are just kind of interested in this idea of change that may be coming, because it's been, for the most part, and I think we discount how much change has actually happened in the 25 years of the DeWitts, but there has been a lot of similar stuff, and the results are starting to show a little bit of wear. So I think there's some people that are hoping, I guess, for that something is changing.
Yeah, I agree.
All right. Well, what you got working for Fangraphs in the next little bit?
So I just published a big update that we do every year where we try to figure out how to look at teams' depth to kind of use that to better understand and contextualize their playoff odds. So that was a big slog of kind of programming and working with the guys. I think it's called an even newer way of looking at depth, and that just went up. The Cardinals look pretty good on that, actually, because they have so many players who are pretty good who could feasibly fill in for the stars who are out. And I think that's going to increasingly be a feature of the site as we try to do a little bit better job of kind of taking the way that teams actually look versus how they hope they look into account. So that's pretty exciting. I'm expecting more on that front as I work more with our team. And aside from that, just doing my normal kind of in-season baseball stuff. So I write 5 things I liked or didn't like this week every week. That's like one of my favorite columns to write. It's just like all little goofy things. And so I just spend a lot of time watching baseball and hoping for goofy things. Like all of the outs at the plate on Wednesday, that made it, because I was just like, what is going on here? But like if you find stuff like that fun, we do too, and we try to write about it.
Well, I look forward to it. Check it out on Fangraphs. And Ben, again, appreciate you coming back on, and look forward to doing it again.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
I've got Nate and Ben from Talking About Birds next week, and we'll to be back to talk about whatever the Cardinals have done in this last week. But until then, for Ben, I'm Daniel. Good night.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light?
Hi, everybody. Rich Bray here with a look back at the day the Cardinals traded Enos Slaughter to the New York Yankees. Commonly referred to as Country, but also known affectionately as the Old Warhorse, Slaughter had personified the Cardinals' rough-and-tumble style of play for 13 seasons, a span that was only interrupted by 3 years of military service during World War II. As a 26-year-old in 1942, Slaughter enjoyed arguably the best season of his career when he hit .318 with 31 doubles, 13 homers, and 98 RBIs to finish second to teammate Mort Cooper in the NL MVP voting. In that year's World Series, he hit .263 with a homer and 2 RBIs to help the Cardinals beat the Yankees in 5 games. Slaughter spent the next 3 years in the military, but when he returned in 1946, he hadn't missed a beat, finishing third in the MVP voting while leading all of baseball with 130 RBIs. That fall, he once again helped the Cardinals win the title, batting .320 as St. Louis topped Boston in 7 games. Though Slaughter and the Cardinals were unable to win another NL pennant together, the veteran star continued to impress, finishing 7th in the MVP voting in 1948, placing 3rd in 1949, and placing 6th in 1952. Even in his final season with the Cardinals in 1953, Slaughter hit .291 and drove in 89 RBIs. In fact, on the same day the trade was announced, the St. Louis Globe-Democrat quoted former player turned telecaster Tom Henrich, who said, "They say baseball is a young man's game, but look at Slaughter. He was pitching for Little Rock when I was in New Orleans, and they called him a veteran then. No, sir, it's not a young man's game altogether." Coming off an 83-win season, however, the Cardinals were inclined to disagree. With rookie Wally Moon ready to make his big league debut, manager Eddie Stanky preferred to use an outfield of Rip Rapolsky, Moon, and Stan Musial. Knowing that the proud Slaughter would chafe at playing a reserve role, the Cardinals decided to trade him. Indeed, Bob Bragg of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch reported that the Cardinals captain had already noticed his decreased playing time during spring training and had made no secret of his displeasure within earshot of reporters. "I signed a contract to play," Slaughter said. On April 11, 1954, just 2 weeks away from Slaughter's 38th birthday, and 2 days before their season opener, the Cardinals traded Slaughter to the Yankees for Bill Verdone, Mel Wright, and outfield prospect Emil Tillinger. General manager Dick Meyer broke the news to Slaughter, who was still weeping when reporters arrived on the scene. "It's the greatest shock I ever had in my life," Slaughter said. "To think that I spent nearly all my life with this organization, and then they trade me after I've given them everything I got." While the Yankees were glad to add Slaughter to a roster that already included Mickey Mantle, Yogi Berra, Hank Bauer, and Joe Collins, the trade was met with anger and disgust in St. Louis. Cardinal fans are probably more indignant over the departure of Slaughter than they have been over any deal since Rogers Hornsby was traded to the Giants, J. Roy Stockton wrote in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Meanwhile, in the Globe-Democrat, Robert L. Burns wrote that Enos Slaughter was more than a ball player, as any Cardinal fan could tell you. He was an institution, not only among the fans, but among the players as well. To be tried again, Enos was the ball player's ball player. He played the game the way it should be played. The fans' anger carried over into opening day when they booed rookie Wally Moon as he took his first career at bat. "What should have been one of the best days of my life was turning out to be one of the worst," Moon wrote in 2010. "As I stepped to the plate from my first major league at bat, I was greeted with a torrent of verbal castigation and denunciation from seemingly every corner of the park." Incredibly, the rookie responded by hitting a solo home run, becoming just the second Cardinal to hit a homer in the first at-bat of his career. It marked the beginning of a Rookie of the Year winning campaign for Moon, who hit .304 with 12 homers, 76 RBIs, and 18 stolen bases that season. Meanwhile, Slaughter hit .248 with a home run and 19 RBIs as a reserve for the Yankees. In 1955, Slaughter was traded to the A's, but since the A's essentially served as a farm team for the Yankees, he was traded back to New York the following year, where he helped the Bronx Bombers win the World Series in 1956 and 1958. In Game 3 of the 1956 Fall Classic, Slaughter hit a 3-run homer to lift New York to a 5-3 win. The Yankees released Slaughter in 1959, and he played the final games of his career with the Braves before retiring after 19 big league seasons. In 1985, Slaughter was elected to the Baseball Hall of Fame, and in 1996, the Cardinals retired his number 9. On the other side of the trade, Bill Verdone won the Rookie of the Year award for the Cardinals in 1955 before he was traded to the Pirates, where he continued a 12-year major league career. Mel Wright pitched 46 2/3 innings across 2 seasons for St. Louis, and Emil Tillinger spent 1 season in the Cardinals system without reaching the majors. So that's the story of the day the Cardinals traded Enos Slaughter to the New York Yankees. For more Cardinals history, visit stlredbirds.com or follow me on Twitter at Remembirds, REMEMBIRDS. Thanks, and go Cards.
0-1 to Pujols. In the air, left field, and Pujols has given St. Louis the lead. A dramatic